Hey everybody, welcome back to Active Self-Protection Extra, and today on John's Briefs we have Mark Victor from Attorneys for Freedom, and I want to talk with you, Mark, about one of the dumbest actors I have literally ever seen caught on video. You've seen the channel, you've seen the video already, but now I want to talk about the legal stuff, including something that I think I might have got wrong in the initial part. Today's video is brought to us by Firearms Legal Protection. Firearms Legal Protection is a legal defense program for lawful gun owners with a 24/7 emergency hotline and plans designed specifically for self-defenders. They are offering a discount on their plan to Asp fans, so hit the link in the description for that. Okay, so yeah, Mark, this one here, boy, when we first talked about this, you're like, is this the dumbest video we've ever seen on your channel?
It's hard to imagine. This guy, you could sort of look at him. Right from the beginning, you can tell this guy shouldn't have a gun.
Oh, boy.
This guy should not have a gun, right? And obviously, he has no training. He has no understanding of anything. And it clearly shows, and that's why he's going to be in prison. It's where he belongs.
And he belongs in prison. I mean, and I said that, and I think that it's the right thing. Like, take this guy's guns away. He should be a prohibited possessor. Because of, I mean, just the egregious nature of his bad decision making here. And thankfully, nobody got hurt.
There are so many things wrong with what this guy did that we could probably spend a few hours just talking about this one video.
So we could. You were surprised, like I was, that the DA has given him 3 years on this.
In Arizona, he's going to be north of 5 years on something. I mean, recklessly blowing rounds through a residential neighborhood, driving with your kid in the back the way he was driving, without any regard for the safety of the kid.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it seems like a reckless endangerment of the children.
It's just...
Aggravated assault by multiple on the guy that he's shooting at as the guy's pulling away. I mean, it's just...
Where to begin with
Where
this
to
guy?
begin, right? But I guess that's somewhat the legal system, too, that sometimes the district attorney might say, look, I get the guy a few years. He's a prohibited possessor. I don't got to worry about him with guns anymore. I get him through the system without a trial. Okay, fine.
Well, look, if I'm going to defend this guy, just for a moment, I got to think about this. Let's just say this doofus, as you called him, he wanders into my law firm and he's able to pay the fee, and I've decided this will be a heck of a challenge, right? I think the first thing that you say, to me, it's completely indefensible that he pulled this gun on this guy right at the beginning. On the other hand, we don't know exactly what's going on in the truck, right?
True.
I mean, there could be things going on. Imagine if the guy in the truck has a gun and he points it at our guy. Now, it could be justified. So we have incomplete information here. But it certainly appears that it's unjustified. But if it is indeed unjustified, then I think you sort of concede that point. You say, okay, fine, this guy messed up. He got a little excited. He shouldn't have done what he did. But on the other hand, he didn't discharge around, and it was very quick, and this and that. And maybe he was trying to protect his kid. He did make a little statement in there about threatening his kid. So maybe there's something to talk about there.
And I guess, though, a reasonable person in that instance would, okay, so if I have to draw my gun because this guy's pointed a gun at me and threatened my children, when that guy drives off, I let him go and call the cops and go the other way. I don't do that, for sure.
Every reasonable person does that.
Right.
But this guy then follows the fellow, right? And so maybe the argument is, hey, look, you know, I want to report this guy. He did something wrong. I wasn't able to get his license plate. I'm going to call the police, and I'm going to tell them, hey, there's a truck, and I'm following him, and here's where I am. Here's his license plate. Please pull this guy over.
Right.
Then the guy in the truck brake checks him. We don't know what this guy's thinking about either. Right?
I think that was it was a tactical mistake. I think it was a mistake, but okay, fine.
But there's nothing against putting your brakes on, right?
Right.
And in the doofus, we'll call him, doofus then smashes into the back of him. So, as you say, they have an accident. Now there's a legal duty
to interact,
to stay there and interact, and the guy in the truck takes off.
This is a problem.
This is a problem, and it's one way to view the facts.
Right.
Maybe we should go through it a different way again. But so now doofus is just simply following him because a crime has been committed, and he has a right sort of to follow the guy exactly in the same way if you think back when we had Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman, and George Zimmerman was following Trayvon Martin through the neighborhood, and a lot of people were upset about that. There's nothing against following another person if you're on a public road.
Environment.
So, okay, fine. Then we get the situation where the fellow in the truck backs up and smashes into doofus.
Yes.
This can be seen a couple of different ways, right? I think the guy in the truck could easily say, look, this guy already pointed a gun at me.
Yeah, this is a big deal.
I'm entitled to use deadly physical force to defend myself.
Right.
This guy's following me, and that's why I rammed him, because I'm trying to disable his vehicle. I'm trying to use the least force that I could use. I could have smashed him harder if I wanted to. So maybe it's defensible. On the other hand, a doofus could have said, I'm just following this guy to try to get his information.
Right.
And this guy now commits an aggravated assault on me.
Yeah, we had an accident, and I'm trying to get his information, and now he committed. So this is what I said, and I did say, well, with them in the car, whatever, this is, they're probably protected from that, so it's maybe not an aggravated assault, and you really disagreed with me on that.
Totally disagree with you on that. It's clearly an ag assault. If you take your vehicle and you either intentionally or recklessly smash it into another person and that causes an injury, there is no question that not only is that an assault, but it's an aggravated assault in most places as well, because the reason it's an assault is because you have at least recklessly caused a physical injury. You have also touched somebody. It doesn't have to be direct touching like this. In fact, even when I do this, I don't actually touch you, right? I say he's touching his shirt.
Right, right.
An indirect touching is enough of a touching. And so the smashing of the truck into Doofus's vehicle is enough of a touching. And if he did that with intent to cause an injury or insult or provoke, then at least in Arizona and in many other states, that's going to be considered an assault as well.
And I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, given the fact that he's had a gun pointed at him, that I guess I made the assumption that was an unjustified pointing of a gun. So, we're going to say a guy in truck was not waving a gun around at Doofus. And so, wait a minute, Doofus pointed a gun at me. I'm in fear for my life. And so I used, force.
But as to the guy in the truck,
Yep.
Is it imminent?
Right.
Maybe
Is the
you
gun
could have
being
just
pointed?
maybe you could have just driven away. Now, I think this raises an interesting question. There's a couple interesting questions here. If the guy in the truck is justified in backing up in self-defense, let's imagine he's justified, there's still a little girl in the car who gets injured.
Right.
And so in many places, including Arizona, even if you act in a justified self-defense way, if an innocent third party gets injured, you're going to find yourself in a lawsuit, if not worse. And so I don't think he knew about the kid in the car, but maybe he did, because at the beginning, the guy, Doofus, mumbles, hey, you're threatening my kids, or something like that. So there could be something to discuss there. In addition to that, this is a really great opportunity, I think, to discuss one of the major rifts across our nation in self-defense law, which is the duty to retreat.
Yes.
And as you know, I am a licensed attorney both in Arizona, very gun-friendly state, and in Hawaii, very not gun-friendly state.
Very not gun-friendly.
So they have different rules on this point. In Arizona, the rule is you never have to retreat no matter what.
Yes.
In Hawaii, the rule is before using deadly physical force. This only applies to deadly physical force. And like other places that have these doctrines where you have to retreat, you don't have to retreat if you're home. You don't have to retreat if you're at work. And you only have to retreat if you can do so in complete safety.
Right.
So as to the guy, back to the guy in the truck, one might say, in response to his claim of, hey, I rammed him because I was acting in self-defense. Well, if you're in Hawaii, you might say, well, okay, you're using, we'll call that deadly physical force. And of course, that's a disputed point as well.
Of course.
The guy in the truck may say, look, I could have backed up a lot harder than I did. I was just using the minimal amount of force to try to disable his vehicle or to let him know to leave me alone. Then it's not in deadly physical force. We're not in a retreat situation. If, on the other hand, it's considered deadly physical force, and it may very well be, there's a strong argument that when you use your truck and you smash another vehicle with it, you're using force that could result in death or serious physical injury, at least. So now he's using deadly physical force. The question in Hawaii is going to be, could you have retreated in complete safety?
And I think, though, so if I'm thinking about this video and thinking about making that argument, I say I did retreat. I tried to retreat, and guy, ended up hitting me. I tried to run away again and get away from him. He kept charging me, so I ran out of the option. It wasn't working, so I had to do something else.
I understand the argument. The counter argument is, well, you could have kept driving.
Trying.
Why'd you stop? Why'd you ram the guy? You didn't have to do any of that. So in Arizona, we were talking about it here in Arizona before we even talked about the duty of retreat. We were talking about it in the context of imminency.
Yes.
And so, as I think about the difference in the two rules, what I conclude is they're really not that different to begin with, right? Because if you really could retreat in complete safety, maybe you don't have such an imminent problem to begin with.
Correct.
It has to be complete safety.
Right.
Right? Now, this guy could have said, look, I could have just driven off, but the fellow is chasing me. He's got a gun. Bullets travel pretty fast. I wasn't in complete safety. Therefore, I couldn't retreat. It probably comes out the same way, whether you're in Arizona or whether you're in Hawaii.
Certainly in a case like this, there's probably less gray area here, or less difference between them than what we'd think.
I think it's a good video because it raises a lot of issues that, to discuss. And then, of course, after the guy finally retreats again, he takes off. Then we have another incident where Doofus chases him, and then there's another smashing of the vehicle. And this time, Doofus gets out and decides, as the other guy is driving away,
shoot
he's
at
just going to start blowing rounds through a residential neighborhood. I mean,
Which endangers not only the guy in the truck, but all the neighbors and everything going on with them. So again, I can't believe this guy only got 3 years, Mark.
this could have been not just an aggravated assault, but an attempted murder. Doofus could have easily been charged with attempted murder, right? He's taking out his firearm. His best argument is, I'm trying to stop a fleeing felon.
Right.
But he's using deadly physical force. He's aiming at the guy. I don't think it flies, frankly. I think that even an attempted second-degree murder charge is a real danger for Doofus. So the fact that the dude got 3 years, what I'm thinking about if I'm the prosecutor is, okay, there's a way to present this case, right? I mean, what if Doofus's lawyer comes in and says to the prosecutor, look, the initial pointing of the gun was totally justified. You didn't see what the guy in the truck was doing. He was doing this, that, and the next thing. And then my guy's just simply trying to chase him. And next thing you know, this guy's using deadly physical force against my guy. My guy's the victim here.
Yeah.
So there's an argument there.
Those scumbag defense attorneys.
You got to watch out for those guys. But it's actually not the defense attorneys that the prosecutor is worried about. It's the jurors.
The jury, yeah.
And so at the end of the day, the prosecutor is thinking, could this be something when we clean this guy up and we put him on the stand and he explains what's going on? And there was indeed one point where Doofus looks back to see his kid to make sure his kid's all right. So I don't know if you make much out of that. I can tell you, the mother of Doofus's child isn't going to be very happy.
Not happy at all
Not
when she
happy at all
watches
with
this,
Doofus. And there could be a child endangerment charge brought in this case as well. So anyways, lots to talk about. Sometimes prosecutors, if they are worried that there's a real self-defense argument, and remember, self-defense is a complete justification.
Yeah.
There's a real chance that this guy walks. Well, then, maybe you have to think about it. And also, this is another good point to point out in this video. Arizona has a rule that's changed that could apply to this case since I've been practicing law. It used to be when I started that self-defense was what we call an affirmative defense.
Right.
Which means that Doofus, if he was going to claim self-defense, would have to prove it up.
Yeah.
But that's not the rule in Arizona anymore. Now you make what we call a prima facie showing. Doofus says, hey, I acted in self-defense. Now the government has to prove, or the state or whoever's prosecuting has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was not acting in self-defense. And of course, it's very hard. You could imagine a defense attorney for Doofus getting up in front of the jury and say, ladies and gentlemen, did the prosecutor prove that my guy wasn't acting in self-defense? He was
Beyond
scared.
a reasonable doubt?
He was scared. He was rammed twice by this guy. You didn't see what he was doing inside the vehicle at the beginning. He was afraid. He was trying to be a good citizen to protect other people against this guy. He's on the phone with the police at the time. He's chasing them down. Did the government prove beyond a reasonable doubt he did not act in self-defense? So I don't know if that's the rule in New Mexico or not because I haven't looked.
Right.
But if you add that rule, and a lot of the gun guys love that rule because it's easier to show that one acted in self-defense, but that's not always the outcome we're looking for, is it?
In some cases, it's not. So I do think as well, though, that the guy in the truck, obviously, you said, hey, we have a couple of things here where the prosecutor could have got squirrely and even thought about charging him in those instances. Now, I think I'm going to say, maybe I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I think most prosecutors are trying to do a good job for their community and are trying to do the best that they can to keep their community safe and put bad actors out of society. And so you look and you go, okay, so stupidity itself is not a crime, and so I'm not going to charge you with that because you made bad decisions, but I'm not going to punish you for that. Is that how you see that going?
Well, Sort of. I can tell you this. This is one of the big problems we have in our entire world right now. Is we're commenting on a video that we really don't know that much about,
That's
right?
true.
And people get upset and outraged and say, "Oh, I can't believe that the guy in the truck was charged or was not charged or whatever." But what is his attitude? What did he have to say? What was he thinking about at the time? This is why it really makes a lot more sense to have people who are professionals really take a very close look at these cases, because we can play around with the facts a little bit, and what you will notice, and you do a lot of this, if you just tinker with the facts just a little bit,
Yep.
it can completely change the outcome of the case. So if you can imagine the guy in the truck presents very reasonably and very scared, and his position is, look, I'm talking to my neighbor, we're talking about a kid's birthday party this weekend, and here comes this guy who points a gun in my face and tells me he better move, and we saw him on the video say to the 911, I'm about ready to shoot him in the face. This guy's out of control, a complete lunatic. He's following me all over the place. I'm worried he's going to shoot me. This is why I back up to try to disable the guy's car, and then I get out of there, and he keeps following me. So if this guy doesn't, like I like to say in a shorthanded way, don't be a yahoo, right?
There's a rule, be reasonable.
Be reasonable. If he's coming across as a reasonable guy that's not looking for trouble and just trying to get out of there, even if you do cross the line, because there's a lot of gray area, right? We have definitely self-defense, definitely not self-defense, and then we got this huge gray area where we like to talk about, really the question is always the same, is it reasonable?
Right.
Is it objectively reasonable? Not just, do I think it's reasonable or do you think it's reasonable? The hypothetical community member who's reasonable in every way, will that person think it's reasonable?
You guys have heard me on the big channel say Ned Flanders. Would Ned Flanders from The Simpsons think this is reasonable? That's kind of my way to say, if he thinks it's reasonable, it's probably reasonable.
And so we have a lot of prosecutors who will look at it, and when we're in that gray area, we'll say, look, this guy's not a problem.
Yeah.
Or this guy is a problem. We look at his history, we look at what's going on. I mean, maybe some of these things prosecutors wouldn't want to admit to publicly, but don't we actually want them doing that? I would say a good prosecutor looks at what we call the totality of the circumstances and says, is this Yahoo here? Is this a Yahoo that we need to really whack? Or do we have a good guy here who was put in a tough position, who didn't have a lot of training, who didn't, the guy in the truck might say, I don't know about self-defense, I don't have a gun, I don't know anything. All I know is this guy's pointing a gun at me and now he's following me. I'm just trying to get him to stop following me, and that's all I know what to do. So we don't know what his attitude is.
So I think that brings up a great point to end with today, and that is that when we watch a video and we read news stories, we don't get the whole story.
Not at all.
We don't get the investigation from the investigating detectives. We don't get the statements from the victims. We get them sometimes because I'll actually get people involved in the videos come and talk to me, and that gives us some more information. But without that, we're speculating a bunch. So biggest thing out of this one, don't be doofus. Don't do stupid things with guns because you'll go to prison.
Imagine Doofus if we could rewind and say, look, man, just keep driving.
Yeah, it's none of your business.
Just keep driving. And he goes on, he's on charge, and there's no problem, and the kid's fine, and everything's great. To me, that's the big lesson, right? You got to be smart enough to avoid the big problems.
There it is. Mark, thanks for the advice as always.
Thanks for having me, brother.